All right, Dr. Nico Darras, thank you so much for being a guest on Wicked Smart Golf, dude. Excited to talk all things golf today, I feel like.
I appreciate you, my man. Pumped to be here. Thanks for having me. And we were already chatting before this started. It should be a really fun one.
Definitely. We got to give a shout out to our guy, Michael up at Silverleaf. Has he caddied for you a lot then? Is that
So
how you guys met?
Marty and I played a bunch. I feel like I've had tons of jobs in golf. And one of my good buddies who runs the Silverleaf Caddy program, Diener, he hired me, and Marty and I worked together and played together. And he definitely beat me in plenty of money games up at Silverleaf. That's for sure.
Yeah. He's a stick, man. We always have some good matches in the Arizona golf stuff. He signs up for pretty much everyone, just like I do.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit obsessed with tournaments, as you know very well.
Yeah. He's the man.
Cool, man. Well, that's kind of where I want to start. Like before we get into practicing, working with PGA and LIV guys, and doing all the different things you do, we gotta like rewind because, well, first off, your content on Instagram is awesome. Like if you guys are not following him, make sure you do. I'm gonna link to everything down in the show notes, but if there's one free like content place, I always say like stay off YouTube University. Like following you though is gold, dude. Like you have such good, you have a practice, you have mental course management. It's really good content. So as a fellow content creator, I just want to say nice job there. And, following your journey over the last few years has been pretty cool. So you are not like born and bred in the golf world. I've been playing for 25 plus years. You're pretty new to this and you're like lightning years ahead of everyone else. So how did golf and you start?
Well, I appreciate all of that, especially from one content person to another. It means a lot. It takes a lot of time, spend a lot of time doing it. So that means the world. And it's funny to start where I think we'll get to eventually, like being good at golf or being like light years ahead and then realizing like what actually good is so shocking. And like, to me, the goalposts keep moving because like I started playing golf, just over 7 years ago. I'd never played. I was 22, was a baseball player, got hurt, blew up my rotator cuff a month before the big league draft. And that was it. And one thing leads to another.
Injuries, like you couldn't heal from. I heard you talking about the podcast, and I'm like, oh man, like no stem cell, nothing could have done it.
In those days, it was pretty severe, the tear, and my body was banged up. I was very well done. Like it was very clearly that door closed, and being devastated, not sure what to do. I was 22. I had a buddy who played golf in San Diego. He actually just won the world military golf championships.
Nice.
Who was so cool. So he was my college buddy, and he was, caddying in the city amateur. He asked me to caddy in the city amateur. And I was like, all right, man, like I don't know anything about golf. And this is how clueless I was about golf, which is hysterical for you in AM events. In the city amateur event, I got a bib made with his name on the back and like my name on the front because I had only ever seen Augusta. Like that's what I thought caddies wore. So I was like, oh, of course.
That commitment though, man. I gotta get friends like you.
Dude, I was fully in on it and I cracked up and he ends up winning and like one thing leads to another. I get super into golf really quickly. And like anyone with an addictive personality, I very quickly realized that this was fun and I wanted to get better fast. And the challenge was, I didn't know how to get better. Right. So I'd never played golf. I didn't grow up around it. My sister played college golf. She was a stick, but like I played baseball. She played golf. And they always, in those days, it was like, oh, don't swing a golf club. It'll ruin your baseball swing. The classic age old, nonsense that it's not true, but whatever.
It's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been about 20 years since I've swung a bat. Nobody wants to see me swing a bat, but when I was like 13, I was playing both and I do remember hitting a lot of hooks. So
yeah,
I was just a bad golfer though.
The one thing about baseball, which is so interesting, and I'm really close with the TPI gang. So Dr. Greg Rose and Dave Phillips, we talk about baseball players. And one of the reasons that I have so much speed is from learning to push. So baseball players use the ground so unbelievably. And they're super elite rotational athletes. And it's one of the reasons that most all of them have speed. Now, a lot of them hit just huge block cuts. But once they figure it out, like really quickly, they understand how to push and use the ground. And that was that. So fast forward, I moved to San Diego for grad school. I went to University of San Diego for a master's of social innovation. And just like at a really special time, there was a group of kids and pros down there that just kind of took me in at San Diego Country Club. This is like pre-COVID. So we talk about like how crazy things were. Pre-COVID, I could join for a year for like, I forget what it was. It was like nothing.
Just
And
stealing.
I didn't pay an initiation, like had no dues, just paid whatever it was. And like, I got to learn golf with this group of kids who now it's so cool. They're all college studs and a couple of them are going to be pro here soon. And, you know, we play together every day, like this group of really elite AMs and pros. And I just watch them play every day. And like if people are taking things away from this, which I hope they will, that's my goal. Like playing with people who are better than you is going to be a really central theme to my life, and getting beat every day. Like I got beat every day by these high school kids, college kids, you know, pros, whoever it was. But I was like, okay, how did he hit that shot? How did he hit that one? How did he hit that one? And then, so I finished.
Crazy though. Like the people, like I have a whole chapter in my book about that too. If like, especially if you want to get into tournaments, like you have to play with better players. Like when I was trying to like get good and went to Q school, like I was consistently playing with guys that were always beating me. I always lost money, but I felt like I was learning. And like that, it's just one of those things. But so many guys are just terrified to be the worst guy in the group when it's like, that's the fastest way to speed it up.
Oh yeah. Fast forward to today. I mean, I live in Jupiter, you know, Tour Pro Central, and I was talking to a group of really like high level college players the other day. And I said to them, I've lost every day for 2 years. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, what do you mean? I was like, no, I lose. I'm the worst player in my group every single day. Like I show up on the first tee and I get torched every day. And but I said to them, I go, I mean, yeah, whatever my handicap is, I haven't kept a good one in a while. I probably should. It'd be kind of fun to check, but you know, whatever it is, like I just said to him, I was like, how willing are you to lose? Then how willing, you know, are you to progress? So fast forward. Yeah. So I started playing golf that year in San Diego, moved to Scottsdale, started playing Outlaw Tour as an AM the next year. So in 2 years,
we gotta stop there. Like that's crazy, dude. Like that's great. I've played in Outlaw events. I've went to Q school. I've done a lot of like high level amateur stuff, but to just go from like, I just started picking up to jumping in and like playing with guys that can shoot 61 on any given day. Like, what did you play in any other tournaments before or like?
So I played in a Kauai amateur, like probably 4 months after I learned, and I 4-putted 16 to lose. And I like distinctly remember that. And then my next tournament was an Outlaw Tour event, whatever it was, a year later. So yeah, I mean,
like that, what was that first tee? Were you nervous? Were you like, oh man, these guys are like, this is their livelihood. They're pretty good.
So here's the interesting part. Like I never, there's two ways to look at this, right? I have no scar tissue. I've never lost an AJGA event. I've never played high school golf. I've never had a coach tell me to lay up on a par 5. So like I entered golf at essentially the professional level. Let's just say it. That was my entry into golf, where I don't have the scar tissue, the like frame of reference that a lot of people do, which is I think now as like a tour coach, one of the cooler things, because I just look at it as professional level. Like that's where I entered into this. So to answer your question, like, was I intimidated? I didn't know to be intimidated. I didn't know what good was. I always tell this story. It's hilarious. So one of the first ones I played, I remember playing the Friday Kenny Mack game, on Outlaw, and I shot 71. It was like my first time shooting under par in like a, you know, event. And I came in and I was like sick. Like I'm playing in the Masters next year. Like this is it. And some kid shot 61 that day and I lost by 11, and like, then becomes the story of Golf Blueprint. So I was a first semester doctoral student studying education. I had just shot 71, lost by 11. And like, I had no time. I had no, you know, I didn't have a coach. I didn't know anything about golf. I was just playing. Yeah. Yeah. So I was self-taught. I mean, at that time, I'd probably taken a lesson here or there. I don't remember, but no, largely just self-taught, which is all cool because it was all outcome based, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. But my first semester, I was reading this book on educational learning theory, and driving home from that event, I hear, Dr. Kevin Moore on the Fried Egg Pod. So we're good buddies with those guys now. And he was talking about using math to score better. And I was like, okay, total nerd here. Like I get this. This makes total sense to me. This guy's going to teach me. It was like super advanced course strategy then, when course strategy wasn't really like a thing. He built this model that could take my dispersion pattern over any golf course in the world at that time. And like we could, you know, basically pick landing areas, like where to aim, super, super cool stuff that a lot of people are doing now. But this was, you know, years ago then. And we did it and it was awesome. But then I stalled out really quickly We always say like, we figured out, all right, I hit my driver in a 65-yard window. Why am I still shooting 72? And very quickly we realized that I sucked at wedge play. And like hearing that was really difficult because, you know, as someone who made a lot of birdies at that time, I didn't understand how I could be a bad wedge player, but, you know, shooting 72, like I thought that was good. And he was explaining proximity, you know, distance to the hole, bogey avoidance, all those type of things to me. And then my next question was really the logical one of, well, how do I improve? How then, okay, like to me, and I'm like very okay to like live on this hill that like statistics are worthless unless once you understand statistics, what to do with them is the result that comes from it. And so that was really where Golf Blueprint was born from of like, yes, I now understand that strokes gained exist. I understand that I'm a bad wedge player. I was probably like below average, whatever. But now what? How do I actually improve it? Because otherwise you're just telling someone, hey, you're not good at hitting 7-irons. Well, how do I get better? Now, I mean, I've been down every rabbit hole, which I'm sure we'll laugh about. Clubs, gear, stance, grip, wind, ball data. I mean, you name it. I'm in the rabbit hole of it. But at that time, I had this like beautiful ignorance that practice was the answer and that practice would, you know, get me to where I needed to go.
So when you learned you were a bad, quote unquote, bad wedge player, you were tracking your stats.
Yeah.
And then he was analyzing it, and that's how you realized it. And then, so when you did figure out you had room to improve there, what did you then do? Or is this the kind of epiphany moment of Golf Blueprint?
Yeah. So this is kind of the epiphany moment where it starts. So I created, anyone who's a school teacher or has a partner as a school teacher, it's called a learning menu, which is basically where the learner is empowered to choose what they're going to do. So I went on PGA Tour data and I looked at all the data and I said, okay, from 75 to 100, from 100 to 125, 125 to 150. And I just got all the numbers and I said, all right, let's start there. Here's the data. Then I created basically a little like spinny board where I would spin it and whatever it landed on, I would practice. And then that kind of evolved into like, you know, all right, so today.
What was on your spinny board though?
All different things. So it'd be like 100 yards. It just started like, think about so simple. Like it started at like 100 to 125 yard wedges, right? That was like the first spinny board. And then the other one would say like 60 to 80, whatever it was.
Gotcha. Okay.
And really quickly I like got better and I was like, wow, this is so exciting and like addicting. And then progress stalled. And that was the interesting part because I was exhausted having to choose what to do every day. Like showing up to the golf course, even though I like technically had these like 10 drills to choose from, the mental work of having to actually pick what to do and then execute, as like simple as it sounds coming from baseball, I didn't show up to the ballpark and have to choose my practice. My coaches told me what to do. My job was to then execute, and I was evaluated upon my execution.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Yeah, it's like why the billionaires wear the same outfit or you know, just they do the same thing it's like that's true because I mean even I'm a very advanced golfer compared to most AMs and I show up to the range I'm like what am I doing? And I need a blueprint and you know like it's that mental you just don't even like factor that in sometimes. Yeah.
Totally. It's cognitive fatigue, right? It's cognitive fatigue showing up. Golf's one of the only sports in the world where you have to show up, choose your own practice, then be your own coach, and then evaluate yourself. Right? It's this crazy thing to me as a golf outsider where I'm like, this is a broken system. Why in any other sport we want to get better?
You saw that though. That's a good thing that you were able to come in with a different background and see like there's a huge flaw here.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And it really was understanding. Like I felt like I was looking around. I was like, am I crazy here? Like, why am I the only one who's trying to figure out what to do with my practice?
Well, because you look at everybody else and they're just randomly hitting clubs with no targets, the biggest buckets, no breaks, no routines, just rapid fire. So clearly you look like everyone else out there, but you're probably doing a lot better. But I mean, most people have no idea what to do. I go to the range and I'll just watch for 5-10 minutes. I just love observing. Cause I'm like, this is content gold, not to like film them, but to be like, what are we doing? Like, I love watching a 55-year-old guy walk out and just start hitting driver.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, it's an interesting thing where like, I think of it as levels. Like level 1 is just like being aware. Okay. Like there's something out there. Level 2 is understanding your data and understanding like, what are you good at Let's start with that, because everyone has a superpower and everyone has something that allows them to be what they are good, right? So for me, I was a baseball player. My first day, I had 190 ball speed, like day one. That was from baseball, and it became, right. So it was crazy. So then it was like, okay, how do I level this in and harness this in? But that was my superpower. And fast forward to today, it's still my superpower. I still need to take what I do and make it better, which is kind of the challenge of learning and practice. And like what I do now today for all of our tour pros is everyone wants to get better at what they're bad at. Obviously, like if you're a poor chipper, let's just say, if we spend all our time chipping, then we're going to lose our other powers in ball striking and, wedge play and whatever it is. So that's like a very delicate balance that I'll say to your listeners of understanding what are you great at? And human beings are very poor self-assessors. That's like tons of research out there. So get some data, track some statistics. It's not hard. There's a million apps out there that do it. Learn. Are you a good driver? Do you lose strokes off the tee? Do you struggle with specific clubs or yardages or whatever that is? So like that's step 2. Then step 3 is being able to go to the range and implement it and have fun. More importantly, that's another thing that I like. I will always say this to people. The person who's over there sweating and like profusely sweating with like 2 large buckets and their hands are bleeding and blistered. I was watching The Office the other day and there's like a hilarious video of Andy with his like double blistered hands. Like that sucks. That's not good practice. That's not enjoyable. You're not coming back for that the next day. Yeah.
Don't you think that's the problem too, though, is that we all see that like image of what Tiger used to do in his prime. And it's like, he would hit balls for this many hours. He would run 5 miles. He'd work out. He'd play 9, eat lunch, go back, play 9, putt, do it all over again every day. Like this guy was a robot, but in reality, he probably did that a couple times. But don't get me wrong. He's obviously gifted. He's wicked smart mentally. He has everything else. He worked harder than probably most people. He got in the gym, but that probably, might be one of the reasons he kind of burned out a little bit, even if he was doing something like that too, right? It's like you can over practice.
Yeah. So I've never worked with Tiger. I've heard all the stories. I've heard some wild, amazing, true stories from people who were there. I got to work with one of the best players in the world last year, and we laughed when we saw his daily schedule come out, and the team and his physio and I were sending it to each other. I was like, this is psychotic. It was like same way. It was like 5 a.m., eat 7 raw eggs, like 8 a.m., 4-hour workout, like noon, plays 70. It's just like, guys, like, okay, like let's take a step back too. Tour pros are just like you. They're normal human beings who have families, who want to do things, who have a life. This is their job. And if you're listening to this, you're probably not a tour pro. You're probably an amateur who works. Hopefully you're a great dad. You're a great partner, whatever you are. You're a wife, whatever it is. And your job is to be that. Golf is a secondary thing that you want to maximize your time spent and you want to enjoy it, which I will die on this hill that if golf practice is a grind, you're not going to want to come back tomorrow. Why do I practice every single day? Why do I enjoy it so much? Because I enjoy it. Like it's the classic chicken and the egg, man. Like, do I do it because I enjoy it, or am I enjoying it, therefore I do it more? That's kind of the fundamental question.
Yeah. Most people don't look like they're having fun.
No.
People have fun. That's why people don't practice. I think a lot of times too. Like that, all the fun is associated with being on the golf course, which that is a lot of fun. But you're saying you can make practice fun, and that's like the staple, or that's like the hidden ingredient that most people just don't have.
Yeah, even amongst tour pros, right? Like I always ask them the same questions. All the tour pros. Like I have my little toolbox of like, do you enjoy practice? Some of them love it. Some of them love to grind and like beat balls, and that's like their happy place. Most of them want to play, but the common theme is it's pretty boring. Right? If we look at a golf driving range differently, to me, again, this is an outsider's perspective. It is madness. We stand on a flat tee with no pressure. We hit one, rake one, hit one, rake one. There's no targets out there typically that represent anything that you see. And even if you hit a great shot, there's no reward. If you hit a bad shot, there's nothing. And you're not at your heart rate that you're playing at. We know that, like, overwhelmingly. We know that now. And if you look at another sport, I always like to use basketball as this analogy. If you and I are going to go practice basketball and we stand there and we dribble and we shoot 1,000 free throws, would anyone say that we practice basketball? Maybe we practiced a part of that game, but we didn't dribble, run, play defense, get rebounds, shoot threes. And to me, the driving range is shooting free throws. It's a part of golf. It is not golf. And at like the highest level, tour pros fundamentally understand that. That's why a lot of them don't really practice. They play more. But at the amateur level, you might not have time to play 18 holes, 36 holes, 9 holes, whatever it is a day. You might only have an hour a day. And if you have an hour, that's awesome. But you want to be able to enjoy that time. That's like so fundamental to me that practice can be enjoyable. And more importantly,
get better.
Yeah, you can get better. Like novel concept.
There's nothing worse than spending money, taking time out of your day and walking away being like, that sucked. I got worse. Like, yes. And then you don't even want to whatever. So it's a hard, mix there, but you're saying that there's absolutely a way, to make it happen.
Yeah. And we'll walk through those. Like we'll talk to your listeners about how to do it, how to make it engaging, how to make it fun. And there's no test in the driving range, which is huge to me. Like golf is a fundamental test every day. There's a score and then therefore there's results. And whatever your self-perception is, if you're a 10 handicap and you shoot 72, wow, like you just careered it and it's the greatest day of your life. If you and I shoot 72, it's like, I left a few out there, probably didn't do this great or that great, right? So it's like we talked about, there's levels to this. So on the driving range, you and I have the same test as an 18 handicap. There's no feedback. And so being able to create small tests every day so that by the time you get to the big one, which whatever it is for you, like what's your big golf goal this year? Like you tell me, do you have a big golf goal?
Yeah. So finish in the top 10 in Arizona golf rankings.
Love it. Love it. So like for you, that matters, right? And for you, there's going to be inherent pressure showing up to tournaments, trying to perform well, trying to do that. Well, if that's the only time you're ever basically putting your finger to the fire is in those events, probably going to be more difficult than someone who is training every day, working, putting themselves in little tests so that by the time they get there, it's just the result. It's inevitable of what's going to happen. And that's what we talk so much about with our tour pros is if you are doing the things that you're saying you're going to do, your results are inevitable. It's just what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's big. And I see you talk about that a lot on Instagram and honestly, you motivated me to do more competitive practice. So before we even go down that rabbit hole, cause that's a lot of fun to think about doing burpees and all the other stuff. How do you like break up practice? Like, I wrote down, block practice, variable, skills, competitive, and on course. Are those kind of the big five? Am I missing any or?
Yeah, those are the basics. And there's tons of, so academics, I always crack up because we love to like break things down even further into the minutia. And so let's keep it high level at those categories. Those are wonderful categories.
Okay.
To me, block practice is important. Of course, you're going to block practice. I don't do a lot of it, truthfully.
You feel like that's happening more at the higher handicap level when they're just trying to get the fundamentals,
when you're trying to develop skills. Let's say you're learning like my girlfriend is a beginner golfer. And so when we're working on, I don't know, we're hitting 7 irons with a driving range, right? I'm not asking her to shape 7 irons. I'm asking her to hit 7 irons. So is that technically block practice? Yes, I understand that's block practice, but I'm asking her to move targets. I'm asking her to aim left, aim center, aim right. That might be all we can handle right now. Then as she starts to hit them better, we'll say, okay, hit this one a little higher, hit this one a little lower. For us, that's teaching her club face awareness and then asking her why. Why did that ball go high? Why did that go low? So in terms of the like types of practice, it's very like a hotbed issue, I guess, in my little academic, niche of golf, like block versus random. It's this like, you practice block or you practice random. I'm like, dude, we all do both, right? I like to skew more to the random. The other one that I'll add in, which is actually really huge, is creative time. So non-judgmental creative time, especially at the highest levels of golf. I was working with an LPGA girl yesterday, ironically. And I said, okay, I want you to start this 3-wood 70 yards left of your target and then fade it in. We had like a really fun wind and she's hitting him in there. And she looks at me and she goes, I hit this shot last tournament. She goes, I've never practiced this one time in my life, but it's that creative, like one of our favorite games is called Slingers, where tour pros try to hit a 4-iron with as much cut. I'm talking like 100 yards of fit, like just big old slices and then big old draws. And guess what? One time throughout the year, they're going to hit that shot. They're going to be underneath the tree. They need to run one out. And it's fun. It's engaging. So I like to add in that little one of like the creative time.
Yeah, that's good. Because I feel like, we get down, you only have so much time and you're using this training aid or you got a lesson. And yeah, like if you look at kids practicing, especially putting, they're just having a blast.
Kids in my learning theory model, like in my world, are truly the best. Like if we could all learn like children, the world would be a better place. And I am like so pumped about that. And if you watch a little kid swing the golf club, they also push so well. Dave always says that. TPI Dave always says that. Little kids know how to push. They freaking turn and rotate and drive. And if you ask them for practice, they're so creative. They're so creative and they're laughing and they're having fun. And then at what point does it become serious and a job? And like, I have to take this seriously and I can't laugh. I always say to my guys, like, when you're doing your creative time, put on your favorite tunes. Like, listen to whatever music you like and just zone out and enjoy the game. For 99.9% of us, we pay to play golf, which is like a fundamental shift versus when we'll talk about the difference between pro golf and amateur golf. If you're paying to play golf, you need to enjoy it because this is your paid leisure time. You are literally paying to do this to yourself. So like, why would you go to the driving range and beat yourself up for an hour? I don't understand.
People do too.
Dude, I get it. Like, I fully understand. Like, you want to get better, but like, you are paying to do something. Make it fun. It's supposed to be fun.
I couldn't agree more. I'm guilty of that too. I definitely fall into like, I'm such a type A and, always results driven and trying to always get, make the most of my time as an entrepreneur and golfer. And it's like, did I feel like good out there? And yeah, I don't have enough of those. Like, that was just fun. I just hit a bunch of random shots like that.
Yes.
That's very, very true. Cause when you're having more fun, you're more likely to obviously you're going to enjoy it. You're going to want to come back more. And that's probably, you're wicked smart in these categories way more than I am, but I imagine that your brain is like, hey, we're going to be able to learn a lot easier too. If you're stressed out, I feel like you're really making it hard to learn.
Yeah. And it's a very delicate balance between like, I get to work with Claude Harmon out of his facility at Floridian, and it's called Team Flow. And it's this very delicate balance with like a super high level group of AMs and pros, where it's that push pull of like, how hard can I push you in terms of the competitiveness? And then how much do we need to kind of pull back with like, all right, today we're going to work on creative shots. We're going to, we're not going to use any irons, or odd irons today. Or like yesterday, for example, they couldn't use their fairway woods. They can only use driver and then 4-iron. So it creates, you have to create shots and create different challenges. Like I always say to people, one of my favorite ways to improve, if you're listening to this at home, go to the golf course the next time with half your set. That is like the age old little kid thing that like, when do we stop doing that? When do we need 14 clubs? Another one that I'll give your listeners too. When you're on par threes, find the right club. So say it's 160 yards. Like what would you hit? I'm trying to think about holes that you've played.
Anywhere in Arizona, pretty much.
Okay. So let's think about talking stick. Okay. It's talking stick north. What's the par 3? Is it 9 that comes to the clubhouse? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's like 200 yards. Like what would you hit, in that club right there? Like
most likely 5 or 6-iron, depending on the wind or pin.
Okay. So let's assume it's a 6-iron. So next time you're there playing that, hit a 5-iron. Learn how to hit a flighted club with a different shot. It mentally engages you. It creates a really thing. We just call it 2-up. So like if I would hit 7-iron there, I'm using a 5-iron. Those little kind of games that just fire your brain to create fun and engaging challenges. Cause then eventually one day when there's wind or whatever it's going to be, hey man, I've hit that shot before there, versus, the guy who's like, no, I always hit 7-iron here and they come up 20 short, whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's just like mixing it up. I used to do that a lot in high school too, like go with half the bag, or our coach would do that, or they would take the flag out of the greens and we'd have to aim for the middle. Like just doing stuff like that is a lot of fun. And it's just, you just get away from it. I don't know why. As you get older,
when does it stop?
Exactly.
When does that stop, right? When do we start being grown-ups?
I know. I'm a big kid still. But I apparently need to improve on the golf course. So what are some other ways that guys can have fun in practice before we kind of get into Tour Pros and Golf Blueprint and all the other awesome stuff you got going on? Like what are, cause if you think like, I feel like at all the places around me when I go practice, I see 6 or 7 pretty common mistakes. Guys are hitting large buckets. They're just rapid firing, no routines, no competitive practice, none of that. Like, what are some other ways, maybe mistakes that they should avoid and or maybe ways just to have more fun and actually make practice more beneficial?
Yeah. So first of all, those 6 or 7 things basically nail the gamut of it, right? So you nailed it. The second things that I will say is that if you're a family man or family woman and that's your time, make that your time, make that important so that you communicate that to your partner that, look, this matters to me, so that when you're there, you're not on the phone. You're not working. You're not dealing with emails and nonsense. And like, that's your 1 hour a week. That's your, like, going into it with that mentality where you're like, this is my spa. Like, I'm so pumped to be here because this is my time. Drink a beer, enjoy what you're going to do so that you're already going there free of the burdens of whatever you're going to do. Obviously things pop up, life pops up, but like when I'm at the golf course, when I have, like, I work now full time, right? So if I get an hour, I'm pumped to be there because I tell my partner, I tell her, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be at the course for an hour. I'm going to hit balls. And she's like, have so much fun. Right. So then to me, having a partner that buys in, if you're single, life's great. You go enjoy it. Right. Do what you got to do. I was there. I was hitting balls at the night range in Scottsdale every night, so very different problem set.
Special driving range, by the way, for those of you guys that don't know, it's more dirt than grass. So
if you can hit wedges there, if you can hit, you could do it anywhere. I swear moving to Jupe wasn't as hard because I'd hit 1,000 wedges from there. Also, there's a good chance.
I stopped going to that range. I lived catty corner, like right there, Villa Bellagio, right there. Yeah. I stopped going because I felt like I got worse because I was just thinning every wedge.
It's terrifying.
So, yeah. And you got a TrackMan. I saw a video one time out there. I mean, this guy's a TrackMan out there. These people have no shirts on at that range.
No, it's the best. Yeah. I would TrackMan and just hit like lasers at nighttime. And it was the most fun ever.
Yeah. So you've always done a good job of having fun too. And I never would have thought that there would have been a relationship advice on this channel. Then that's actually exactly it though. Because if you're out there and your mind is at work or your family and like all the other things, you're not going to have as much fun. You're not going to be as focused. So that's a wicked smart relationship tip too.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Having your partner like, look, you communicate that this is super important to me and that I love doing this. This is my time, that I'm pumped, and then reciprocate, right? When it's their time to do whatever they want to do, that's their time. So that's been like a huge thing for the amount of hours that I put into my craft, that I needed that buy-in, because otherwise I'd always feel guilty. Like, oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. So that's my first thing. The second thing is to like fundamentally understand that you're not a tour pro. And once we like get over that big hill, this is like a gondola ski hill that we need to get up there. All of us want to be tour pros. I get it. I am like we talked about, touching it right here, like that beautiful painting. Like I'm right here seeing it. I'm not a freaking tour pro. Like that is like the gap between.
Yeah.
I was laughing with my brother.
People think like scratch golfers could like go compete.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man. I got to scratch and I'm like, oh boy, I'm nowhere near. And then I got to +2 and I'm like, I'm still nowhere near. Like it's so hard for people to understand like the difference between it all.
The LPGA conversation that pops up on Twitter every like 6 months of like, oh, is there a scratch golfer? It's like, guys, you have no idea how good these tour pros are.
Yes.
I do this every day. And like the level between me and a scratch golfer is literally probably smaller than like me to my tour pros. And that's what I always say to these guys. Like it's so different. So like once you can like wrap your mind.
Is that for expectation management?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like nailing your expectation management, that when you go to the driving range, you're probably not going to flush every 7-iron like 2000 Tiger. Like it's okay, man. It's all right.
You should be club twirling though. That's always fun. At least, come on, you're making it fun. You got to practice the twirl. If you're gonna
the driving range club twirl's huge. Be that guy.
But no, that's really good though, because I talk about in my book like a whole chapter on expectation management, but it's more on the course. So if you started in practice though, then you're probably gonna have it on the course. Because if like you don't hit 7-irons in like a 15 yard dispersion on the range, why do you expect it to happen on the golf course all of a sudden?
Not.
So that's key. I like that.
Yeah. Understanding that like we all want to hit our, okay. I get to work with the best players in the world and they want to hit it better. And once you realize that like that is a thing that on the driving range, like they are trying to hit it better and we're us mere mortals, you know, who work 8 to 5, like you are not going to flush 7 irons. And I'm like so okay with saying that, you know, and then basically the next part is understand the high yield parts of your game. If you are a 10 handicap, I am okay with saying this. You are not a good driver of the ball. It doesn't exist. If you're a 10 handicap, you're not hitting it 300 yards in the middle of the fairway 12 out of 14 times. It's not. So you need to become better at the areas that are going to pay off. Now, on the flip side of that, golf balls at the driving range are expensive. Putting and chipping are free. So that's another part that I will always say to people, like you can go to a driving range and putt and chip for free for the most part. So if finances are an issue, which they are for everyone, I don't care how, you know, what your financial situation is, then understand that too, that you could get a small bucket of hitting balls and still spend an hour putting, chipping, doing whatever you want to do, wedge work. So that's another part that I think is like criminally underrated in golf is how expensive it is and how expensive it is to even practice. But you can putt and chip.
$20 buckets of Papago, by the way. So
man,
$20 like, for a large at the city course. So I'm like,
yeah, I've been to enough golf courses that, you know, are $22 a bucket now. And you're sitting there and saying to yourself, hey, that just doesn't really make financial sense. It doesn't make sense for the average person to go practice. Then they want to get their value, right? All right. That's the other weird thing in golf. I've even seen this at the highest levels. Like if I'm having fun, did I get my value? You know, some people go to personal trainers to get like abused and like, I can't walk. Like that's better. To me, I'm like, this is a terrible workout. Like I could design games that tour pros can't complete. Now that being said, I try all the time and they still complete them. And that drives me freaking nuts because then I have to like, I always laugh about that. I'm like, I design like the most sicko hard games ever that are impossible. They'll text me and be like, yeah, I did it in, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm just like, come on, man. How? But for the average person, like understand what areas are going to help you, right? There's tons of data out there for your handicap level, whatever that is.
I want to talk about that driving thing too, real quick, because I had Lou Stagner from Marcos Golf. And God, he just has so much awesome stuff out there. And we talked about driving a lot, and he's just like, the longer you hit it, the lower your handicap. I mean, you just look at any stat out there. It's just, no matter how good your short game is. And so I know you didn't have any issue, getting speed, it sounds like at the beginning, but most golfers. So the average listener is I think it was a 13 handicap. And their biggest goal is to break 80 consistently. And obviously, like you were just saying, driving is huge. Where do you fall with speed training and at what programs have you used? Or are you more like workouts and speed training, all the above? I know you're a tinkerer.
Okay. So this is the part where if you're listening to this, I'm apologizing beforehand. I'm going to say sorry. And that some people in life just get a different lot. I'm saying sorry. So like preface this to your listeners. I am sorry for this. I got lucky. I started playing 7 years ago and I immediately had whatever it was, 190 ball speed. I got to 200.
Just to give people context, I've been playing 25 years and I've never had, 190. So thanks for making me feel bad. I appreciate you. But thank you for saying sorry at least.
So the Bo Jackson of like, he never worked out and whatnot. Like I'm not a weightlifter. I have amazing physios around me. That have designed programs and have helped me with strength training. I started lifting when I was 9. The guy who they actually made a 30 for 30 about him. This is like a whole like childhood thing. Hilarious. But they made a 30 for 30 about this guy, Marv Marinovich, the one who I
watch it. I love 30 for 30.
Yeah. So he had the perfect quarterback. That was my trainer at 9 years old. So from 9 to 22, there's pictures of me that, I literally am like, absolutely freaking massive at 17 years old. So I was always really, really, really strong in the gym. But transitioning to golf, one of the only lessons I ever got, the first question that the club pro asked me goes, are you a long driver or like a golfer? And it was an interesting conversation because I didn't realize I didn't realize that like, unless you're Bryson, you don't really do both.
Yeah.
And so in terms of speed training, and I talk a lot about this on social media, so I hope this isn't like foreign to you. You understand it. Your listeners might not.
Oh, I talk about speed training a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a bell curve, right? And the like 30 handicapper who hits it 160 yards off the tee with their driver is over here. I'm over here. Most of your 13 handicappers are right in the middle. They probably hit their driver somewhere between 200 and 240 yards. And for speed is everything for them. If they could hit it 255, if they could hit it 265, life becomes so much better and more fun. Now this is the part where I get to complain. I'm 195 mile an hour ball speed. It becomes difficult to play at that level too. Because my dispersion is so wide, a lot of golf courses just don't fit that. So I end up having to either tinker with my equipment, like we can talk about, we can go down that rabbit hole, change my strategy, or what happens the most time is I have to hit less clubs off the tee, which is giving up my advantage. So rather than if we're playing, have you played Arizona Country Club in Scottsdale?
Yeah.
Okay. So I love ACC. It's like one of my favorite places in the world. If I'm playing a money game for my life on the line, we're going to ACC because I'm going to tee it up right here and I'm going to tomahawk drives into the other fairways.
Yeah.
The director of golf there, Nigel, one of my like dearest friends, at one point he called my line on the 5th hole an egregious display of golf that he said disgusted him and all those who had come before me. Like I aim 150 yards right of where I should
be. Trying to hit it as hard as you can. Just
tomahawking.
You can spray it anywhere there.
Yes. Now I live in Florida and there's water left and houses right and fairways are 35 yards wide and there's massive penalties for hitting it offline. So it's kind of come full circle to where distance for me, I get to laugh about, I'm like doing it tongue in cheek, but it becomes a problem, right? So that's always the like,
this is what we call that one.
Yeah. Like it's like so niche of difficulties, but for the average person, like speed training's huge, man. There's amazing systems out there.
Yeah. Do you think it's speed training or tempo as well? Cause I had the app creator of Tour Tempo on.
Yeah.
And he was awesome. I used to use the app a lot more. I've been using it lately though, because I used to have really bad tempo, low and slow, right? Like everybody grew up. Well, you didn't grow up hearing that, but that's what all of us.
Yeah. That's your generation.
It's like it was literally like, if you could go in my subconscious and find the golf part, that would be one of the 5 things. Lay up to a good distance and low and slow, right? And that was one of them. And he was like, if you just use the app and speed up your swing, not even getting into ripsticks and super speed and stack, you're going to like start hitting it better. And so I always tell everybody, like, start with that app too. Like that's an easy way because you work with the best players in the world. You've seen like John Rahm swing at any of the pro golfers swing. It's 1 second or less. The whole thing. Most golfers' average backswing is 1 second. It's like slow.
Yeah.
And then you try and, make it faster. So it's like, do you think it's speed training and also working on your mechanics?
So let's go into all of the above. So let's go to me now today. For me, the most important thing today is mobility and not flexibility. I'm always very clear about that. I made a rule for myself that when I'm at home, if I'm watching TV, I'm stretching. And that's like, I'm doing some sort of like mobility work because
now I'm going to feel bad watching shows because that's a good rule. That's a good rule. I know it because my foam roller's looking at me most of the time.
I sit on my foam roller.
Nico's thinking, okay, all right.
I sit on my foam roller and I'm doing super passive stuff, right? It's anyone can find a yin yoga class. I'm like deep in yoga. Find a yin yoga class online, learn 5 moves, do those. I'm not talking about. My
girlfriend's a yoga teacher too, so I got no excuses.
Perfect. There you go. So I'm not talking about doing, crazy handstands. I'm like laying there with my legs out, whatever I'm doing. So that's huge. So to bring it kind of full circle to your question, it's mobility, it's strength, it's understanding, how you deliver the club effectively. It's your technique. And then if all of those things are zeroed out, let's assume you're healthy, you have no injuries. This is like the TPI, my like TPI Dave brain. You're injury free, you have no mobility issues. We understand you're delivering the club. Then there's things like super good buddies with the stack guys, right? Marty Jertson, awesome guy. The super speed guys, Dr. Tyler Standiford and I do research together. Amazing. That kind of stuff. Love that. Our tour guys are doing it. It's amazing what you can accomplish.
The tour guys I know Matt Fitzpatrick obviously was the most noticeable one in 2022, but the guys are still doing it, even though they're already at 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, you're seeing it. Like if you were to walk down the driving range of any LIV, PGA Tour, LPGA event, like you're going to see those things in their bags. Like that's, they're doing it. it's kind of like in baseball. I like to use this analogy. If you don't throw 90 miles an hour, you're probably not in the big leagues, right? Like you better be a world-class knuckleballer and, someone's going to use the one person who's not. But like pretty much everyone on tour has some speed, right? Getting to that next level for those guys, like getting from 165 to 173 is a huge jump for them. That's the difference between, maybe you come 124th in the FedEx Cup or 137th, whatever it is, right? That's
but you're
that
saying
level.
that's low hanging fruit for everybody. So it's not just speed training though. It's like you said, it's exercise, it's mobility. So that's something that you're constantly thinking about.
Yeah. Every day
for your own game, and what you recommend for probably all your students and everyone else. Like, yeah, practice is important, but it's about the body. It's about the mobility, the flexibility, stuff like that.
Yeah. And playing injury free every day. That's the biggest challenge, right? Think about if you're working 8 to 5 job where you sit down all day long and then you go straight to the practice tee and you're ripping 7 irons, like probably not going to work out. Right. So that's where I look at it, kind of holistically and say, all right, there's way more pieces to the puzzle than just, this one thing in a nutshell.
What's your warm-up routine look like before you hit balls on?
Okay. So this is a cool one. So I like to do my warm-up at home. So a quick yoga class. I have a million of them online on YouTube. It might be 15 minutes. I like to do something before I get there. Now, sometimes in the morning, if you don't have the chance, or say you're teeing off at 7:30, chances are you're probably not going to be up at 5, right? I'm not Tiger. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. or whatever he used to do. But I do
Sleep is optional for him.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Like there's superhumans out there, I'm sure. But I do like a really simple, like sport rotational warm up. Like I'm moving.
So not a workout, but more like a stretching yoga.
Yeah. Like I'm doing a dynamic warm up for if I have, and I always say this to people, like if your tournament routine needs to be the same as your everyday routine. That's like a massive thing for your listeners to take home. If you show up to the golf course 15 minutes before, blade a couple 7 irons and go play, and that works for you, when you go play tournaments, if you get there 2 hours beforehand, now all of a sudden we are in danger mode, because now what? That like,
I couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, like you can't change it. Like it's because I know guys that can get there 25 minutes, and I'm like anxious as hell for them. I'm like, where are you at? You haven't paid for your skins. Like you're about to go off. I'm already there. Like I know me. I'm at least 60 minutes. But you have to figure out what works for you. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, if I have 30 minutes, typically I'm working, I'm running from a meeting or doing this, or I don't have an hour anymore before I play. I just I realize that now I have about a half hour. I'll spend 15 minutes of it stretching, getting loose, moving around, chatting with my buddies, whoever I'm talking to on the range that day. And then I'll hit maybe 15, 20 balls, go roll a few putts, go to the tee. That's my routine. Now, is that optimal for like if I had a PGA Tour start in a month? Probably not. But this is, again, let's go back to like, I'm not a tour pro. I'm a regular dude who has a regular job, who also plays golf a lot. And so that works for my life. Everyone wants more. I wish I had 2 hours. I wish I had, an amazing doctor to like stretch me out before and, work out my kinks. And, my buddy Jimmy Yuan, who works on a bunch of tour pros, like he's a wizard. I wish he could, adjust me and then I could go play, but it's not. I'm showing up. I got my coffee in my hand and, here we go. Let's go send it.
Do you use any of the speed trainers before? Because I like using the stack protocol sometimes, not the full one, but like just I'll use the full weights and I'll do like 8 or 10 swings with that, take it off to the 120, and then I'll do a couple with that. I feel like it helps me kind of loosen up. I don't know.
Yeah, so I know a lot of guys that do that. I don't do it personally. That's not in my routine. But I know there's tons of guys that do it. And the one thing that I will say again is there's no right routine. Right. If you look at, I get to work with Claude and, Claude's been an amazing teacher and friend to me. And like Brooks's routine is very different than John's routine, is very different than, Cam Tringale's routine, who's different than Pooj. There's no right answer, for what you need to do to get ready to go out there and compete. So that's huge. Like if you see something on YouTube, try it. It might be perfect for you, but like good chance are, that's what works for them.
That's good. That's a good call. Yeah, everybody wants the one thing, right? The this is exactly what to do, and I do
No,
this. But yeah,
it
you got to
doesn't
figure out
exist.
your body. You got to figure out your amount of time. And I
Yeah.
love too, just kind of going back full circle, like the expectations. You're not a PGA Tour player. You don't get to go to the chiropractor right before. You don't have a massage, and then you go
Yeah.
out to the golf course. You use your Golf Forever training.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like, yeah, okay, I like that. So curb the expectations and find what works for you. And I had to at least close the loop for our practice. I know we talked a lot and we'll get more into that, but one part of your practice routine that I haven't even talked about enough on the podcast is competitive practice.
Yeah.
And I have done this. I encourage all my readers and listeners to not give a shit what anybody thinks about you on the golf course, specifically in practice as well. But I haven't touched upon this nearly enough. So please explain what is competitive practice.
Let's dive into this. So it's really, really, really important for people to understand where I am today and where I came from. Today, I am Dr. Nico Darras, who has worked with all these tour pros. I have Golf Blueprint. I have this business that, has these wins and whatever, right? All of that. 4 years ago, I was a lunatic doing burpees on the driving range by myself, profusely sweating, listening to metal music as loud as I could, hammering my heart rate up through the roof, and then chunking wedges. So I basically, I think it's so important for people to be like, yeah, well, it's easy for that guy to say it. It's like, no, dude, I was that quack that was on the range and everyone made fun of. Everyone laughed at me. Everybody said that was stupid until it worked, until I beat him, until I showed up and I shot that score. I did that. And then now it's easy because I have all of the, tour results to prove whatever. Right. But then people made fun of me. But here's what I say. I wear, there's no free ads, but I wear a Fitbit every day and it shows me my live heart rate. There you go.
Fitbit buddies. 2 years, 10,000 plus steps every day. No big deal.
Love it. That's a huge flex. Good for you, dude. Like that's sick. Like I'm like, no joke. That's pumped. So for me, the reason I chose this one and we can totally get into the heart rate conversation if you'd like, but
so
I like this
practice
one.
Is basically speeding up your heart rate. So it's simulating competition or
so I know where
you're just out there.
Yeah. So I know where my heart rate is, on the course. I know where it is when I'm panicking on the first tee for something that matters to me. And that's so important because your goals are huge for you. So obviously I've had players sit with me and say, my goal is to win the Masters. That's very different than a player sitting with me and saying, hey man, I have $300 in my bank account and I can afford one mini tour entry. That's a very different level of pressure, right? That's a very different level of need or want, or I would like to, the same as for your goals, our top 10 AM player. That's amazing. And that's so important to understand that what makes you get up out of bed in the morning or what makes you nervous is going to be different than the next person. It's also coincidentally why I'm not a big gambler on the golf course. All of our finances are very different. $500 to you is very different to me, very different than the next person. But when it comes to competitive practice, understanding, and it's very easy to track. All of us wear, wearables at this point. What's it like in a tournament? Are you a 130 heart rate guy or are you a 90 heart rate guy? Are you a 70? What do you practice at? But going back to the basketball analogy, it's way easier to shoot free throws when you're just like, just walking up there and shooting them than after you just play defense. It's the fourth quarter, the game's on the line, and you need to freaking make that or your team loses. That's the same analogy as the 72nd hole in golf for something that matters for you. If you have a putt to win the AZM, that's a huge freaking deal to you. Very different than, a putt to beat me in a, skins game, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it's so key and nobody does it though. Nobody does it. We talk about, the driving range is ridiculous already. No, you don't get flat lies and no consequences in golf.
No.
But yeah, so competitive practice, I see you. So what do you do? So you do burpees, you do squats.
Yeah,
so basically you're hitting a shot and then you're doing a certain amount and then you're going like right into do you go through your routine or do you just get right up and like hit the golf ball?
So it depends on what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to figure out. All of this, by the way, came from the U.S. military and special forces, which I also am like so huge on explaining this to people. The U.S. military has spent billions of dollars training kids to become Navy SEALs, where there are zero-sum outcomes, right? We need to take a 17-year-old kid, put them through BUDS, and in 2 years from now, make them a deployable Navy SEAL. How do they do that? They chose exercise. People always say that. Why do you choose exercise? I'm like, dude, I didn't choose it. The US government has already done this, and they figured out that stress, people are like, well, it's different stress. It's like, okay, we can academically pick apart what's real, but they chose that. So therefore it works well enough for me. And so depending on the day, depending on all sorts of factors, right? What am I trying to do? How long am I doing this? What's the end goal? But like the easiest thing for your people to do at home, do 5 jump squats. You can do 5 burpees if you want. Take 20 seconds and go through your routine and then hit the ball and see what happens. I will crack up because I chunked it for 6 months. And guess what? That's what happened when I got nervous on the course, man. Like it's like this 1-to-1 ratio of whatever the monster that lives under your bed is. If you have the chipping yips, it's not a surprise because you get over the ball, your heart rate freaking skyrockets, your hands get clammy, and you chunk it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. It's like, cause that's, everybody's like, why am I good on the range and not on the course? It's like, well, they're night and day difference. There's all of a sudden consequences, right? But it's like, yeah, that's when you're that miss, whatever your miss is, the block, the thin, the yip, whatever it is, it's like, it. But when you can get yourself in pressure in practice, which I think I've only seen you do it, and I've done it. I was in Cabo on a family trip, and I was kind of hungover. It was a golf trip, or we were just there, and I played golf a couple times, and I went and practiced because the facility is amazing. So everybody's there. It's like a really nice place, and I'm like, maybe I saw one of your videos, or I just was inspired, and I'm like, man, I haven't done any competitive practice. I was like trying to get the demons out a little bit too, and it was kind of muggy. So I dropped down. I'm doing push-ups, getting up, hitting bombs, and these guys are like looking at me, and I'm like, don't worry about it. And I have my book right here. I had my book right here. I was like, it's wicked smart. Don't worry about it.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like so different, but it's super helpful. Like if you and I think it gives you the not giving a fuck about anything else, because so many guys email, I want to get my first tournament, but I'm worried about playing with other people. I'm worried I'm not good enough. I'm worried about XYZ, which is usually just what other people are going to think about you. And I remember some of my first tournaments that I got back into, I was worried I'd be playing bad in the middle of the back 9. I'd be like, what are people going to think about me?
Yes.
And when you do competitive practice, you're already just like hardwiring your brain to be like, it doesn't matter. Like people are going to judge me, but you know what? They can judge you for being really motivated and trying to do stuff, or they can, they're going to judge you either way. So it's like, if you're doing that in practice, you're just setting yourself up for when you are in that club championship or that $5 skin that you want to win, or you're playing your best round. It's going to be less foreign, and that pressure is going to be something you can at least simulate in practice.
Totally. And I really want to touch on this because it's so important. I have it sitting right there. There's like a little frame, and it's Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena. And I look at it all the time because one of the biggest barriers to entry, even for me today, is entering tournaments and competitive rounds, because what if I shoot 80? That's my new, right? Like I'm at the skill level now where like, I'm probably not going to shoot 90, but who knows? Maybe it'll happen. There's Florida golf. There's tons of houses. But, what happens what if someone on the internet says that, oh, you suck? And, I always say this to people, like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Who is the one person that could criticize you? Who is the one, comment or whatever it might be that would just like crush you? And I have a buddy who's a pretty well-known celebrity, and he always says, he goes, if you have an issue or you'd like to criticize me, you can call me. And if you don't have my phone number, then you can't criticize me. And I always thought that was like a really cool way of looking at it, because on the internet, you and I's world is out there that everyone can see it, and everyone can comment on my videos that I, whatever. I've an overwhelmingly positive Instagram, which is so like amazing and blessing. Thank you to all those people, but I'm still conscious of it. So it's no different than my girlfriend and I went and played the ranch in Laguna Beach, this little par 3 course, like so fun. She gets the first tee and she goes, why are those 2 people standing there? And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, why are they standing there? I go, well, we're playing with them. She goes, well, I don't want to play with them. And I stopped and I cried laughing because she'd only played with me. And she goes, well, I don't want them to watch me. And I was just like this like hysterical moment of like, oh my gosh, like, she was mortified to have these people watch. I always tell the story in every podcast I'm on. Dr. Lonnie Mallow.
No, it's so funny because the first time I took my girlfriend to hit range, it was at our favorite lighted driving range.
Love it.
This was in 2012. We go there, and she goes, why are there other people here? I don't want to watch me. You got rented out the driving range?
Yeah. No, it's actually just our private wing.
Yeah, like I'm like 24 years old. What kind of money?
Yeah, the $20 is a lot, including the beer that I'm gonna buy in here for $8. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I always tell the story. I think it's so
yeah.
I think it's so relatable to people. So Dr. Lonnie Malo, one of our like dearest, oldest OG Golf Blueprint members, he is an ER doc and like has accomplished everything you can accomplish in med school, right? You'd think like this like mega genius. And he started playing golf and he was terrified because at the end of the summer, he had to play with his boss. And his boss was like a good golfer. Let's use quote unquote good. Who knows what he was? And he's like, I need to break 120. That's like my goal. Like, don't embarrass myself. That for him was the same pressure level as you and I teeing it up for me today in a minor league tour event or for you in a, AZM event. Like probably more so because he didn't have the skill. He had never actually done it. And so I always say that to people like, yes, we're always going to be afraid. And once you find out that PGA Tour pros are terrified as well, then like all of a sudden it becomes so much more, like, wow, these like people that I watch on TV that just like hit laser 7-irons that don't move are so nervous too. And that's okay. That's like totally okay and like understandable. And, I always say this to people today, like, I'm not any less nervous. I'm just physically better today than I was 2 years ago. I'm still just as scared. I am terrified when I get on the first tee, but I've done it now so many times under pressure that it's like, all right, I'm probably not going to top this one. Like I'm okay. I can skank this driver out there and hit it in play.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you never grow out of it. I mean, even Tiger said he still gets the butterflies, right? Like everybody still, you work with the best players in the world and I'm sure they still, if you don't feel excited, you don't want to even be there. Like that's half the reason that's why I tell everyone sign up for a tournament. You'll really experience one, you're going to learn a lot about your game. And two, you're going to really feel the importance of the mental game.
Oh yeah. No, there's tournament golf and we call it hit and giggle golf are not the same. Like if you show me everyone, especially in Scottsdale would have that friend that can shoot 65 and, is the best golfer. And I'm like, hey man, we used to have this saying, like, how many scorecards have you signed this month?
Yes.
And like, if you're not signing scorecards, like we asked about my handicap. I don't know. I haven't played in tournaments. I'll tell you in a year, when I start playing again, when I'm competing, but my, whatever my vanity handicap is, it's not real. Guys who sign scorecards every day, and I don't care if you shoot 90. Now, the person who signs up for the US Open or, the Monday qualifier that's going to shoot 100, like that's horrific. And you shouldn't do that. That's like,
you're ruining it for everybody else.
It's like so selfish and not okay. Like I'm a firm believer that if you shoot more than 48 in a Monday qualifier and 9 holes, like you're out. I'm like, okay with going down that road. Same with the US Open. You're not getting in. You're not going to shoot a 24 on the back 9. It's over.
Yeah.
But
100%.
But if you're playing in an amateur event, you get to sign up and shoot 95 and that's freaking awesome. That is sick. Like I'm pumped for you. You had the courage and I used to do MMA and this is like a huge thing for me. Win, lose or draw. The most important thing was that you had the courage to get in there. And anyone who criticizes you doesn't get to, no one who's been in the arena will ever criticize you. And I promise you that. That is.
God, so good. That's so good. I always tell everyone I'm working with, I'm like, if you want to get into tournaments, no one's going to judge you that's actually in the tournament. The only people that aren't are the ones that didn't have the courage to actually sign up.
Yes. 100%. And anyone who's played tournament golf, when you shank the first one, they're gonna be like, dude, I've freaking been there. Actually, I probably played from over there. I know exactly what that bush is like.
Yep. So yeah, tournaments, obviously, a lot of guys that are listening have wanted to get in there and stuff. So we obviously kind of touched on that a little bit. What were some of your like earliest tournament memories? Did you start to realize like, oh man, this is very different than hanging out with my friends out here?
Yeah. One of the most important things, I was talking to a college team the other day, on the first hole of this tournament, I had like 3 feet and one of the guys knew that I had never played in tournaments before. And he goes, that one's good. And I reached down to pick it up and he goes, no. And I was like, oh man, this is freaking brutal. Like putting the 3-footers every day in your practice rounds, you got to do it. I can't tell you how many freaking mini tour pros I play with every day that scrape 4-footers. And then we wonder why they shoot 71 instead of 68. And we wonder why they don't Monday and we wonder why and we wonder why. If you're playing tournament golf, you are doing yourself a disservice not playing by the rules. I know it sucks to have to go back to the tee and reload with your friends, and it's, whatever, just drop one up here, or maybe you hit that other chip. Now, I'm also separating like tournament prep versus like everyday rounds. If you're an everyday casual golfer, who cares? Like, my girlfriend is not reloading from the tee. Like, we're not. We're
yeah,
not.
We already got 5-hour pace of play issues.
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah, I always tell everyone, I'm like, if you want to like actually play in your first club championship or your first state event, you better be putting those things out. You better be playing by the rules, because those 3-footers are already going to be hard in competition, but they're going to be 10 times harder if you haven't hit any in the last 2 months.
It's terrifying. My first few events, I very quickly realized how terrifying putting was. And then as soon as you miss the first one, then you're trying to make the next one, and then you don't want the 6-footer. And then all of a sudden it just becomes this like huge stressor of like, now I can't miss the green. Now I better hit it in the fairway so I can hit it on the, from the fair. It really putt your 3-footers. That is like, biblical, like commandment number 1, freaking putt it out. I don't care if you drop from the middle of the fairway, if you hit it out of bounds, but like make sure you spend the time to putt it out. That is for tournament prep, day 1, hour 1, rule 1 of getting yourself ready. Cause otherwise it gets really stressful really quickly.
Yeah, I had Dr. Izzy Justice of Jira Golf on, and he, is just so smart. And he was talking about how that missing short putts has the highest mental toll on you. Sure. And that's why you're so mad sometimes on the next tee box, because you haven't even processed that you missed it. And so, yeah, if you can avoid that high mental spike by just practicing a little bit, that's key. What are some other mental game stuff that you've learned working with some top pros and obviously playing in high level competition yourself?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that everyone's afraid. Everyone's nervous. Everyone's scared. There's amazing stories of tour pros in the back 9 of majors who were, so nervous they couldn't drink water or whatever it might be, right? They were so scared, but they had been doing it and done it for so long that they were able to execute. And, using the military is kind of that. Like, it's what we're going back to. There's incredible sports psychs out there who help people manage, and they give them strategies and they give them this. That is not my doctorate. My doctorate, I'm saying I'm putting my finger to the fire to where it's numb under pressure, to where I've done it under the stressful situations so many times that I've just basically written that over and over and over. I know what happens when I'm nervous, when I'm standing over a drive with water right. I've done it. So for me, that confidence builds from the reps. Other guys, it'll come from their sports psych, or it'll come from something that their coach told them, or a swing feel, or whatever it is. There's no right answer, but the only way you're going to know is if you do it. The only way you're going to know is if you get in competition and execute. And I think it's really important. We talked about speed. Not everyone on the PGA Tour wins their first year out. It takes guys. I got to talk to Richard Bland the other day. What an amazing, nice guy. Had also unbelievable advice for, I'll tell your listeners as well, that he gave us about decision making, but it took him 20 years to win. And that's a real grinder of a career. One of my good buddies, Steve Allen, been a grinder for 20 years, just got on the Champions Tour. He's 50 years old. So if you're not experiencing initial success today, that's okay. That doesn't mean that next week, next month, next year, it's not going to happen. For guys who are playing Monday qualifiers, it's so hard because you might miss by 1, and then you might not get in for another year, but next year you might get in 3 of them. So that's huge.
Yeah, having that perspective too, and just like everyone wants it, right? It's that Amazon mentality. We're like, I worked hard, so I should get that tournament results. Like, just it doesn't happen that fast.
Here's a Claude Harmon one for you. Every pro golfer works hard, so now what? Like when he said it, I was just like, oh, that, like, damn. Yes, that one freaking hit me right here.
Yep. That's the truth, man. Yeah. And one other video that I saw of yours that I really liked, and it got a lot of viral views, I feel like, was talking about speeding up your routine. I talk about that a lot, and you talk about kind of reacting more than just like lingering over the ball. There's a lot of studies out there that the longer you take actually is a diminishing return. Yeah. Is that something that you're like consciously working on, or is that part of something maybe that you talk about even in Golf Blueprint?
Yeah, tons. So we talk about it all the time with routine. My routine is that I don't have a routine. And as soon as you realize that, it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? I play a million practice rounds, whatever it is, where I'm not setting the club in my grip, walking into it, saying 3 nice things to myself, 4 deep breaths, smiling, and then executing. Dude, I freaking get my number. I look at it. I pick my shot and I hit it. So then when I started playing tournaments, I would get in there and I'd set my club. I'd walk in, I'd look, I'd say 3 nice to myself. I'd breathe, I'd chunk it. And all of a sudden I'm like, what the hell? I did all this routine. Well, I don't do that every day. So it kind of goes back to that. Like, what are you doing every day? If you're a routine guy, and I will freaking lose my mind, even with tour pros, you better do it in practice rounds. Because if all of a sudden all the time we do it is in tournament rounds, then that's signaling to our brain that all of a sudden this is a different situation, that I haven't done this before. I don't know what this feels like. So that's a big one for me.
So tell us more about Golf Blueprint, because this thing is just like a one of a kind kind of like practice plan and so much more. But what is Golf Blueprint? How can people use this to talk about a lot of the things to implement a lot of things we talked about today with just improving practice, even if you only have 30 or 60 minutes?
Yeah. So Golf Blueprint is designed for the everyday golfer. Like, that is your listeners who it's designed for. It's designed for the guy who's working, who is a dad, who has maybe one day they have 30 minutes, the next day they have 60 minutes. That's the goal, right? 3 days a week is about what we've found to be the limit of normal. Like, you're still a good parent and husband and employee, but like you could practice 3 days a week if you're like a true sicko, or like 2 days a week to kind of maintain. 1 day a week, it's kind of hard, right? If you think about doing something 4 hours a month, like, it's probably not enough time. But if you do it, 8 to 10 hours a month, all of a sudden you can improve at something. And so we just create structured practice. We try to make it engaging for people to be able to enjoy it. Again, what comes first, the chicken and the egg? You don't have to do any thinking. We send you an email. We don't have an app, which was like pretty hotly contested, but everyone has apps and there's like too many of them. So for us, we just send you an email. There's no video. There's nothing. It's literally just like following a workout program. You go to the gym. Here's what I do. This is my 60-minute plan for today at the driving range. And then when it's over, we always tell people, if you want to do more work, that's your decision. But this is your homework. This is what you have to do in order to just keep your goals up. And we've seen a ton of people improve, right? It's to me, working with the tour guys is really fun, but I'll give you a funny analogy. I think of it like being a sculptor, where working with the best players in the world, the sculpture is perfect. And whether or not I make any meaningful difference by taking a scalpel and adding in 1 millimeter of fingernail depth in the 12 foot tall statue, probably doesn't matter, right? We always laugh about that. But for like a 18 handicap, I'm freaking hacking off pieces and we're creating an arm. Like, you could almost see ahead when someone becomes an 8 handicap. And it's like, wow, that looks like that's a thigh at a 5 handicap. And then, eventually it becomes what it becomes. But that's kind of the fun analogy of that.
So you just started this, basically, I mean, how old or how long has this been going on?
So we started it right before COVID. So Dr. Kevin Moore, the math professor that I spoke about, he and I started it. He flew to Arizona to meet me the week that COVID happened. So wow. Whatever that day was, he was on the last flight out before all the flights got canceled and grounded. And so we've been working on it for a while then. And then we sent it to our buddies, Chris Sully from No Laying Up. And he didn't tell us he was going to tweet it out, but this is the power of social media. He posted a picture of a practice plan on his social media, and we got 295 emails in an hour. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a Twitter. We didn't have social media, and we didn't know if it worked. So we spent the better part of the next 4 months of COVID on Zoom, just meeting people and just like this, hey, tell us about your game. Tell us about your challenges, what you're good at. And then basically we took thousands of data points and figured out that all golfers share similarities. You're a 10 handicap for a reason. And you can tell me that you're not, and you might be the anomaly, and you might be the one that proves to me that you are freaking Scotty Scheffler with a driver, and by golly, you are the single worst putter that has ever lived in the history of the world. And I will be the first person to watch you play. I'm pumped about it. But there's probably a good reason why you're a 15 handicap. You struggle with driving, you hit penalty shots, you are a bad chipper, you're pretty much you struggle in all the areas. And so from that, then we were able to basically deduce, plans for people and give them a personalized prescription for their game. And then it takes feedback. You send us some information back. We send you. It's that kind of give and take. And it's the same thing in the tour. I know we're going to talk about tour. It's the same thing there. We basically, the first month, we always say it's a guess. It's a good guess at this point. We have so much data that we have a good guess. But then month 2, you tell us, then we send you back, kind of that back and forth, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a full swing? Is it short game and putting? Is it indoor, outdoor, a little bit of everything?
Both. So we have indoor, outdoor. We actually have tons of indoor members, which is so cool. Like indoor golf to me is one of the cooler kind of like the moon of the next stage, where very few people in the country and in the world are able to play golf year round. Most all of us are inside, whether you live in the Midwest or, Pacific Northwest, Northeast. So they're inside. And so we're finding that people can really improve. We always tell people you need a launch monitor, a mat, a net, and a putting mat. Any of those things, any type of launch monitor you use, whatever you have, because we need the launch monitor in order to get data of distances. Otherwise, like, it's kind of hard for us. It's difficult. But indoor, outdoor, you don't need a launch monitor, and it's written so that you can do it at any range across the world with you don't need anything, if that makes sense. You don't need like a specific target or greens. It's written in a way that hopefully works for your club.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you've obviously been doing that for, I guess, almost 4 years now. You've had tons of people probably all over the world. How did you go from working with the everyday golfer that's just like, oh man, like I need help, to working with and so many other great players?
So if we back up, we had a couple tour pros, reach out and signed up for Golf Blueprint just regularly. Like they just literally reached out, signed up, and we were like, all right.
Isn't that crazy though? Like, that had to be so weird.
It was weird.
Did any imposter syndrome set in at that point?
For sure. And it still does. And it will forever, that never goes away, right? Once I remember sitting in a room with like all these like incredible coaches and looking around being like, what the hell am I doing here? Like that never is going to go away. That'll never change. Everyone, thinks that they are the imposter in the room. And I'm fully aware of the one thing from academia that I will say that I always am very vocal about. I am an expert in like the niche of the smallest pinhole drop in the bucket of the ocean, right? There are people who know so much more than me in golf, in clubs. I mean, my friend Chris Brody from Ping, poor guy. I text him like literally every single day about like the most, like, I'm sure they're like, elementary conversations about, shaft droop or whatever like niche thing we're talking about. But yeah, so to fast forward. So I got a call one day, from a buddy of mine who works for TPI. At the time, he wasn't working for them. And he goes, "Hey, Dave Phillips wants your phone number." And I'm like, Dave Phillips is in like the white whale who like doesn't exist, that you can't get a hold of, that like doesn't have an email, that like doesn't, he's this freaking Bigfoot, wants my phone number. Like what, I'm like going to the principal's office. Like, what did I do? And he calls me and he's like, "Hey man, I've seen what you're doing on social media. I'd love you to work with our guys." And last season so 2023, I had the amazing privilege of working with his clients and getting to just be a part of his team and, seeing his guys and how he works and how him and Dr. Rose work, and just, trying to be an asset however I could in his players.
What's it like working with, or watching the best players in the world practice? Like what are they doing different?
Okay. So here's the wild part. They flush 5 irons every day. So for those of us at home,
this must be nice. I love going to Waste Management just to the range, just to hear them hit.
Yes. Okay. So for your listeners at home, if you're going to go to a golf tournament, I have so much advice for this, like for you at home. If you're going to go to a golf tournament, the best day are practice rounds by far, because you're there, you get to get up close and personal, you get to see them, you get to interact, and they're not typically, some of them are hard-nosed, but like most of the time they're like more in like, all right, this is like practice round mode. They'll sign your kid's autograph, whatever it is. Like asking for an autograph or a golf ball during the round. No one comes to you at your work when you're like deep focused and is like shouting at you and taking pictures of you. And it's like, whoa, time out. So go to the driving range, watch what they're doing. Watch how they hit the ball. Watch the sound that it makes. It is a freaking different sport. These dudes are superhuman. And Claude always has the best analogy of this, because we get to play golf at sometimes the same locations that they do. And the manufacturers tell us that we're using the same equipment as them. We think that we're playing the same sport, and we're not. It is such a different game at the highest levels of professional golf than what you and I are playing, even at the high level amateur or mini tour level. So
What's their practice? I mean, are you creating then like their exact routines of what they should do, or is that like something that I mean, do they have, I imagine John probably has his own routines that have worked, since his ASU days. Like how does that like work, or is it a lot more playing than practicing, or how's it
Every guy's so different, right? So it's so important. It's so important to understand that everyone got to that level for a reason, and I wasn't there. That's like so critical for me to explain to these guys. Like, you got here and now I'm here. So whatever you did worked. And I think it's a big mistake for a lot of young tour pros, especially where guys get on tour, they fire their coach, they fire their caddy, they get a new equipment deal. And well, it's like, this is what I do now that I'm on tour. It's like, well, dude, you got there playing that ball, playing that equipment with that coach, with that caddy. It worked for you. Maybe you were a fader. Well, Rory hits a high draw, so I need to hit a high draw. No, you don't. So that's always like, let's level set, and I'm going to meet you where you're at. You got here without me. Whatever you did has worked. Now, if your goals are to be the best player in the world, if your goals are to win majors, or your goal might be to get a PGA Tour card, that's a very different conversation. And it's all the reason that I I'm not hesitant about it. I'm very specific about this, is that they're all different, right? Working with a pro who, like, one of my guys has been a pro for 15 years. Another one's been a pro for 20, 23, whatever it is. Dude, those guys have been doing it for so long. I'm learning from them just as much as they're probably teaching me more than I'm teaching them, honestly. I'm, it's versus like a David Puig last year, who's a first year tour pro playing LIV, who went from freaking college where, coaches there to you're teeing it up with Brooks Koepka with the big boys. That's
crazy.
That's the real deal, man. That's a whole different level of stress. And, all right, now you got thrown in the fire. That's gnarly.
That has to be just so much fun just to obviously you're going to just hear them hit the golf ball, see their swings. You can just it has to wear off positively on you for sure. What, if you go to the average range here, just for the everyday golfer, technique, training aids, it's all mechanical. There's just so much of that. What, how often are these guys, cause you see guys like Justin Thomas and some of those guys that do have a lot of gadgets kind of set up sometimes. Is that something you're still seeing at the high level, a lot of technique, or is it just set up and pit and driver and wedges?
So Dave says this, every player wants a better swing. Start and end there. Everybody wants a better swing. Everybody's swing wants to be better. They have something, they have a shot they don't have. They have, and that's the other thing too. I think it's so huge in understanding expectation and expectation management. What shots do you have? Rory hits a high draw driver that is sick. I don't hit a high draw driver.
Me neither.
Right? It's, that guy is a freaking superhuman freak who hits tomahawk drivers that don't move. I don't have that shot. So at that level, every one of them, I mean, we could spend an hour talking about each individual player. And then I'm sure in a year from now, we could spend another hour talking about each individual. So the coolest thing is also the hardest part for amateurs. There's no answer. There are no answers to the this is what you need to do clickbait. All right, this is what's going to take you from a 5 to a 0. No, it's not. Not real. It's not true. The one thing I will say is every one of them works. Every one of them works their ass off.
I'm so glad. I feel like that's been the theme of our conversation is figure out what works for you. I love that. I think that so many people just try to fit into a mold. I used to play like Tiger and head down, not talk to anybody. That's worse. My personality is I need to be talking. I need to be interacting. Mental practice, your workouts, your free run routine, personalize it. You can get ideas from me, from you, from John, from anybody, but you have to test and guess and figure out what works best for you ultimately. That's how those guys got there. They didn't follow Tiger's template.
Totally. It's understanding that each swing, and that's one nice thing about TrackMan and launch monitors today, is that it's given us, so many different swings and different ways to do it and understanding how to do it. And yes, there are some that work better and there's some, but guess what? Someone's going to come out with a putting, grip that's going to be better. It's inevitable, right? This is human beings. We're always pushing and we're innovating. And, once the clubs and ball reach a certain point where theoretically they'll be maxed out, human beings are going to find ways to improve. That's inevitable. You and I both will, right?
Yeah. Oh man, I could talk golf all day with you. You've already taken more of your time. So, before getting to my last question, just want to, just again, shout you out. Thank you for being here, for, just having such great content. Guys, following him online. Could you just explain a little bit more about like Golf Blueprint, how people can get started and where to follow you on social media?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're at golf__blueprint, on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. Shoot me a DM. I read them all. I try to, like I said, I try to read them all, as many as I can. Try to post stuff every day if possible. And I always say this, like, you should follow the account because I'm just giving away everything for free. Like I just like for better or worse, I'm like totally open source. And so whatever I'm researching, whatever I'm learning, like I'm posting it. And that is very much my like avenue of, of research. So that's a big one. In terms of the websites, golfblueprint.com. We have a couple different membership models. They'll be, we're always trying to add to the things, make them better, change them. And it's pretty simple and straightforward, but things that I always say to people, especially that are cost conscious these days, follow Golf Blueprint. It's the easiest. You're going to get a lot of value, I hope, out of it. It's not content. It's like educational is kind of what I try to like steer towards. So that's
Yeah, if you aren't following him, please do. When I was doing my research yesterday, I probably watched like all your reels, and I'm like, man, there's so much good stuff. I'm a really good golfer. There's so much good stuff in here. It's just like you got to consistently see it too, and like sometimes you're like, oh man, I forgot about this, and so yeah, I got to
go back and watch some. Go back and watch some old ones, and hopefully I'll learn something. Because now that
I do the same thing. I'm like, damn, I forgot I was doing that. Like,
I was just saying, I'm getting back into golf shape, and hopefully now that the business side is settled in, and I always say spring training for me, like the pre-tour rush is like my spring training time. Like now, hopefully I'll be able to play a little, and so you'll get to see my my struggles and my hopefully my eventual tournament entries and struggle there.
The last question, because we didn't really go down the equipment rabbit hole. What would you say is like the biggest equipment mistake you see from the everyday golfer?
Ooh. Oh man, I have to be super careful about this one because I love my OEM friends. The biggest mistake, let's go from like the top to the bottom. Number one is not getting fitted. Not getting fitted. That is like, again, day one, hour one, rule one, like go get fit. If you play golf more than once a month, you need to get fitted. That's like my threshold of like, okay, if you're like my mom is not a golfer. She plays golf like once a year. She doesn't need to get fitted. Like it's a hobby. It's no different than when I go bowling. I don't need a freaking bowling ball. Like I suck at it. It's whatever. But if you're like serious about this, go get fitted, pay a professional fitter, and then make your decisions from there. The second thing is you don't need the latest and greatest. And I am super okay with saying that like publicly. Latest and greatest might work better for you, but if price and like you're conscious of your budget, you don't need that. The third thing, and this is actually huge, kind of ties into that, is play the right golf ball for you. So our friends at Ping have Ballnamic or Ballnamic. I don't know how they say it. Check on there. It's like $50 and you can get a ball fitting if you haven't done one before. That's so freaking important because your golf ball is like massive. So that in terms of the equipment side is huge. Now you can go down a rabbit hole where I will meet you there. My group chat with Banks and Ryan Barath, we were laughing about this before. I have like officially gone into club rehab where I am no longer allowed to purchase clubs for the next 6 months. And we always laugh. They're my sponsors because they're also my freaking enablers, where like Ryan Barath writes for golf.com and has like every information about every freaking club ever. We have built some of the coolest sets. Some of them will never see the light of day. Some of them are crazy ideas, but just get fitted. Like the other thing is too, and I thought once I got to like the tour, there was a magic bullet that like this was the driver that was going to make me hit it better. It's not. There's no fitting. There's no like magic shaft out there that's going to help you. You're not a 10 handicap because of your driver shaft. You're not on the tour because you don't have that putter. Dude, those guys could beat you with a freaking Kirkland set and, tin cuff it with like a rake and a baseball bat, right? That's right. Like that is not the most important thing. That being said, at my speed dispersion, let's tie this back in, equipment is everything. Where if I'm in the wrong driver, like it makes such a difference because I'm giving up shots. But also the flip side that I will say publicly is I'm not playing the fastest driver for me. So there's a 2024 model out there that I'm 7 miles an hour faster with that I'm not playing. Now, for all of you out there that are listening, 7 miles an hour is 15 yards. Freaking play that driver. That is a huge difference for you. Like that is, it goes back to what's the theme of the conversation. It's nuance. It's understanding like what works for you. What's your budget? What's your time? What, the $700 on new something that might be 10 rounds of golf for you. And that might be, a summer membership if you live in the Midwest or a public golf course. So understanding that like, man, this was really hard for me to swallow. The reason that I'm not on the tour is not because I don't have that set that Bryson has, which I tried to get forever. And let me tell you, one length clubs at 2 a.m. when I'm texting Ryan Baraff, like this is the answer. I'm getting on Korn Ferry Tour next year. And it's like, damn, I'm actually not. And
Oh man. Yeah. I'm so glad you talked about the ball fitting too. Nobody's talked about that. Yeah. That's a sneaky one.
It's huge, man. Like shout out to those guys. They do an amazing job. Ping has so many.
Like, oh, I like Titleist because this guy played this. So I'm going to play this ball. It's like, once again, personalize it.
Yeah, dude. And you don't have to play all 14 clubs from the same manufacturer. Like our tour guys, a lot of them aren't playing.
Just did an episode about that. Don't be a brand whore. You're just, it's not going to work. Like if the best guys in the world don't have to play all 14 of their sponsor, why are you?
Okay. Let's clarify though. If any OEM wants to pay me, I love all of your clubs. I'm ready to rep it. Just send it to my agent, AKA my girlfriend. And, I'm sure she's going to be the one that, it says yes to that.
I love it. I love how some of the places where you buy clubs now, they have a note for like you won this driver. It's like they're for all the wives and women out there. Like, why is he getting another new club?
I always laugh about that. Like, yeah, if any OEM wants me, I'm fully available, ready to change my tune. Ready. I will sing to your, you name it. I'm here, ready.
You are the man. I really appreciate you being here, dude. We covered a lot of topics and I still feel like we could go for another 2 hours. So just thank you again. I'm going to link to all the stuff, guys, for Golf Blueprint, for his social media, website, all that. Make sure you're following him if at the absolute very least. Most likely though, most of you should be signing up for Golf Blueprint, just because I know it's going to help you play wicked smart golf.
I appreciate you, my man. This was a blast and hopefully we can do it again.